You open the fridge tonight and grab whatever's easiest. Maybe leftovers, maybe a protein bar. You don't think about it, you just eat. But the way you're eating right now is not the way your body was built to eat. And the real answer to what ancient humans actually ate is far stranger than any diet trend on your phone. You've probably heard the story. Cavemen ate meat, lots of it. Steak by the fire, mammoth ribs, a world before bread ruined everything. It's a clean story. It sells supplements. It's also mostly wrong. Here's what actually happened. For most of human evolution, meat was rare, not forbidden, just rare. Hunting large animals with a wooden spear is hard, it's dangerous, it often fails. A single failed hunt could mean days without food, and a serious injury while hunting could mean something far worse. There was no hospital waiting on the other side of a gored leg. So what filled the gap between one kill and the next? Plants, roots, insects. Whatever the land offered that particular week. Primatologist Catherine Milton spent years studying the diets of wild primates and early human ancestors, and her research pointed to something uncomfortable for the steak and fire crowd. Early hominins ate an overwhelmingly plant-based diet, supplemented occasionally with meat, not the other way around. Meat wasn't the main course, it was the bonus round. The thing you celebrated when it happened, precisely because it didn't happen often. Picture that for a second. A group of early humans, walking for hours, digging up tubers, cracking nuts, picking through leaves for anything edible. Meat shows up maybe once a week, if they're lucky. That was normal. That was most of human history. But then, something changed, and it changed everything. Around 1.8 million years ago, human brains started getting bigger. Fast. Too fast for a body running on raw plants alone. Raw food takes enormous energy to digest. Your gut has to work overtime just to extract calories from it, grinding, fermenting, breaking down tough plant fiber cell by cell. So how did a slow, weak, unarmed primate suddenly afford a brain 3 times the size of its ancestors? Fire. Harvard biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham built an entire theory around this exact moment, arguing that cooking food didn't just make it taste better, it externalized digestion. Cooked food breaks down faster. Your gut absorbs more calories with less effort. Suddenly, there was surplus energy the body didn't have to spend on grinding through raw fiber. And the body spent that surplus on the most expensive organ it had, your brain. Cooking didn't follow evolution. Cooking may have driven it. Think about that for a second. The thing sitting in your kitchen right now, quietly reheating leftovers, might be the exact invention that made you capable of thought in the first place. Not a bigger club, not sharper spears. A fire pit, and the patience to wait for dinner to soften. But diet wasn't static after that moment. It kept shifting, season by season, region by region, continent by continent. If you live near the coast, you probably ate shellfish, fish, and seaweed, picking through tide pools at low tide for anything that hadn't escaped yet. If you lived on a grassy plain, you ate roots, tubers, seeds, and the occasional kill, following herds across the horizon for weeks at a time. If you lived somewhere brutal and cold, near the edge of the ice, you might have eaten almost nothing but meat and fat for months, because that's all the land had to give. There was no single ancestral diet. There were thousands of them, running in parallel, each shaped entirely by geography and desperation. Consider the Inuit, living for thousands of years in a landscape where almost nothing grows. Their traditional diet leaned heavily on seal, whale, and fish, sometimes with barely any plant matter at all for months on end. And yet they didn't collapse into the health disasters a modern low-carb warning label might predict. Their bodies, and the bodies of generations before them, adapted to that specific environment, that specific fuel source, that specific way of surviving winter after winter of near-total darkness. Now travel to the other end of the spectrum. Some populations in parts of Africa and Asia relied heavily on starchy tubers and grains for thousands of years, and their bodies adapted differently too. Some researchers have pointed to variation in genes tied to starch digestion, genes that appear more numerous in populations with a long history of starch-heavy diets. Your ancestors weren't just eating differently region by region. In some cases, their bodies were quietly rewriting their own biology to match the food in front of them. That's not a diet plan. That's evolution responding in real time, generation after generation, to whatever was on the table. This is where the modern paleo story falls apart. Evolutionary biologist Marlene Zuk spent years pushing back on the idea that there's one authentic ancient human diet waiting to be rediscovered in a supplement aisle. Her research argued that human evolution never stopped at some golden moment in the past, and neither did human diets, which means there is no fixed nutritional blueprint hiding in your DNA waiting to be unlocked by cutting out bread. Your ancestors weren't eating a diet plan. They were eating whatever kept them alive until tomorrow. Nobody was counting macros around a fire 20,000 years ago. Somebody was just hoping the berries weren't poisonous. And that single fact changes how you should think about food today. Because your body isn't optimized for one perfect ancient meal. It's optimized for flexibility, for adapting to whatever's available, wherever you happen to be born. That's the actual inheritance, not a menu, a skill. Here's where it gets stranger. Some ancient populations ate almost no meat and thrived for thousands of years. Others ate almost nothing but meat and thrived too. Human metabolism can run on drastically different fuel sources depending on where you were born and what your ancestors survived on for generation after generation. Lactose tolerance is a perfect example of this. Most humans throughout history couldn't digest milk as adults, and most mammals never lose the ability to only digest it as infants. Then, in a handful of cattle herding populations in Europe and parts of Africa, a genetic mutation spread that let adults keep digesting it into old age. That mutation is only a few thousand years old. In evolutionary terms, that's yesterday afternoon. So when someone tells you there's one true human diet, what they're really describing is one regional adaptation, stretched thin and sold as a universal rule that never actually existed. What did stay consistent across nearly every population wasn't the type of food at all. It was the pattern around it. Ancient humans rarely ate alone. Meals were shared, split among a group, distributed even when there wasn't quite enough to go around. Food was often scarce, then suddenly abundant, then scarce again, following the rhythm of seasons, migrations, and luck. Feast, then fast, then feast. Your body still carries the machinery for that rhythm, storing fat efficiently, craving calorie-dense food instinctively, even though your fridge no longer runs on scarcity at all. That's why constant access to food, at any hour of the day or night, is such a strange and new experience for a body built on unpredictability. For nearly the entirety of human history, food insecurity was the baseline. Abundance was the exception. You're not broken for struggling with that. You're ancient. Consider what this means for something as simple as craving sugar. That craving isn't a modern malfunction, it's an ancient survival tool. In a world where ripe fruit meant a rare burst of fast, reliable calories, craving sweetness kept you alive. The problem isn't the craving. The problem is that the craving now lives inside a world of unlimited, engineered sugar, a world your ancestors never had to navigate and never needed the willpower for. The same goes for fat and salt. Both were once scarce and precious. Both once meant survival. Neither came from a wrapper. There's something else worth noticing here. Ancient humans didn't just chase calories. They stored knowledge about food, passed down carefully across generations. Which roots were safe, which berries would kill you, which mushrooms looked identical but weren't. That knowledge took years to build and could be lost in a single generation if nobody survived to pass it on. Food wasn't just fuel. It was memory, tested against death, handed from parent to child around a fire. We still carry a version of that instinct, even if it looks nothing like a forest anymore. Watch how carefully people read nutrition labels, how anxiously they research a new diet, how much comfort a familiar recipe from childhood can bring on a hard day. That's not modern anxiety. That's an old part of you, still asking the same question your ancestors asked before every meal. Is this safe? Will this keep me alive? So what does this mean for you standing in your kitchen tonight deciding what to eat? It means the guilt over not eating like a caveman is based on a caveman who never existed. There was no single correct ancestral meal, no perfect macro split hiding in a cave painting somewhere. There was only adaptation, one harsh season after another, using fire, using whatever the land gave up, using each other. Notice what's actually being asked of you here, not a return to some imagined golden age of eating, not a rulebook copied from a hunter-gatherer who never existed in the form the internet imagines. Just an honest look at what your body actually is. A survival machine shaped over millions of years by uncertainty, built to handle scarcity, feast, fasting, and sudden change, all without an instruction manual. It never needed one. It needed adaptability, and that's exactly what it got. The real inheritance isn't a diet, it's a strategy. Eat what's available. Share it when you can, cook it when you're able to, because cooking is still doing exactly what it did a million years ago, handing your body free energy it doesn't have to fight for. Stay flexible, because flexibility, not any single food, is the only thing that actually got you here at all. You open the fridge tonight and grab whatever's easiest, and for the first time, maybe that doesn't feel like a failure of discipline. Maybe it just feels like exactly what a human has always done.